Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program from our studios in Jerusalem. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Martin Blackham and I'm with my wife Nathalie Blackham with a program that looks at Israel, particularly with the news, current events, and we also look at the Hebrew roots and what the Bible says about the last days and the coming of Messiah. And Natalie's always got some very interesting things to share. And so we say hi to everybody across the world. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, one of the things that we do is we look at the news that's really happening on the ground. We're still, as we've come into the studio, we're still in the midst of the Gaza war, in quotation marks, because it's really a skirmish. I guess Simcha, at this stage.
Yeah, no. I prefer to call it Simcha Torah because it was the day where it happened, which was the last day of Sukkot. And interesting enough, in the writing, in the Jewish writing, they said that Gog and Magog will start during the time of Sukkot, which, and they read, by the way, they read Ezekiel 38 and 39, which is the description of Gog and Magog. You know, a lot of people sometimes speak about Gog and Magog and don't say, there isn't so much written. And I realize because it really depends of how we are, how we respond, how Israel respond. So it's not all written. It really depends of how we are with God, if we repent, if we do what is written in the Torah. So it's interesting. But one of the big things that they say, the sages, the Jewish sages, say that Gog and Magog will arrive during.
I mean, we're having some skirmishes in the north. It's not a full-blown war, in my opinion, but there is a lot of skirmishes in the north with rockets from Lebanon coming into Israel and drones and things like that. So. We are having that. There is activity in the north.
Yeah, I think we can't really say anymore the Gaza war because it's bigger than that, and we see more things happening in the north, and we know again in the writing there is more things that would happen in the north of Israel than in the south. So. The beginning was in Gaza, but I think maybe we should call it ourselves, isn't it? Simcha Torah war, because it was right at the end of Sukkot. And we are coming, it's like 10 months now, going into 11 months.
And it's really kind of like the World War III situation, because there are things happening all over the world, not just in the Gaza and the north of Israel, but also in Ukraine and other places. There are things happening, and even if it's not a war in the sense of soldiers, there's a war in the sense of surveillance, censorship, etc. And you're very aware of that in different countries across the world. Things that are happening, and migration is being forced upon different countries, which is changing the shape of the country. So there is things happening everywhere. Now, one of the important issues is what's happening as far as Israel is concerned, because that gives us a clue as to where we are on the map for the last days for the coming of Messiah. Now, Israel's economy is in grave danger as the Gaza war or Simchat Torah war drags on, economists warn. Experts say the economy cannot survive much longer as fighting with Hamas has stalled tourism, forced small businesses to close, shutting down shipping and raising deficit. In Jerusalem's old city, nearly all the souvenir shops are closed. In Haifa's flea market, forlorn merchants polish their wares on empty streets. Airlines are cancelling flights, businesses are failing, and luxury hotels are half empty, or even less. Nearly 11 months into the war with Hamas, the Hamas terror group, Israel's economy is struggling, and the war, as we've said before, is showing no signs of ending. And I'm sorry to say it will not end really until Messiah comes. So you have to buckle up your seatbelt for this. The war between Israel and Hamas has damaged thousands of small businesses and compromised international trust in the economy, once thought of as an entrepreneurial dynamo. The economy right now is under huge uncertainty, and it's related to the security situation. How long the war will go on. This is for people who are hopeful of an end. What the intensity will be, and the question of whether there will be further escalation, said Karnit Flug, Israel's former central bank chief, who is the vice president of research at the Israel Democracy Institute. The hardest thing is that we don't know when the war will end. And I think that's a good summary of where we're at as we've come in the studio. A lot of people are very exhausted because it's going on and on and on. We've had things in Gaza before, which we've reported on for you. We've had wars before in Israel with Gaza, and in the north of Israel, the Lebanon war. But there hasn't been a war that's just been continuous. And that's something very different that people have to cope with. They have to cope with all the things that are happening
because
in the economy, and then suddenly there's also the war in the background. So, you know, it's difficult. Jacob, who is 45, returned in April from 6 months of duty as a reserve soldier to find that his business had dried up. He was forced to shutter the tourism company he spent 2 decades developing. We've talked about the damage to the tourist industry. His only income is from the government in aid, and it's nothing near where his previous salary was. Mayor Sabaga Haifa antiques dealer whose shop sat empty said business is worse now than during the government COVID lockdowns, which were entirely unnecessary and dangerous. On a recent weekday, the former bustling port of Haifa, which is the big ports in Israel are Haifa and Ashdod, and there is also Elat as well. All of them have suffered, but at Haifa, a major hub of Israel's import-export container ships, is now quiet. This is because of the problems with Yemen and the Houthi rebel group endangering shipping as it's going through the Egypt's Suez Canal. So that's down, and many businesses are suffering. We heard a story today of Christchurch in the centre of old city of Jerusalem. Many of you may know the guest house. Christchurch is suffering very badly by the fact that this war is ongoing and doesn't show any signs of ending, and as I said before, I'm sorry to say, isn't going to end. Now, the Times of Israel reported on the Gaza border residents rejecting the government plans for October the 7th memorial. One of the things is we're coming up now to a year, Nathalie. As we've come into the studio, we're not far away from the October the 7th date line. Kibbutz Nirim tells the government, that was one of the kibbutzim which were involved in the terrible massacres of October the 7th, have told the government they will not serve as a backdrop. They have said that production scouts that were sent were kicked out, and they won't allow their loved ones' names to be used. Relatives of the October the 7th victims and other residents of the Gaza border region said that they would skip a state ceremony, which is planned for October the 7th, to mark a year since the Hamas terror attack on Israel's south. Instead, they will hold their own memorial amid simmering anger against authorities for failing to free the hostages. The hostages, as we speak, are still in Gaza. At least two. This morning,
there is some families who went to the border of Gaza. This is like just what's happening today, and they were saying "Aniba, Aniba," which means "I'm coming, I'm coming." Like they are shouting with loudspeakers to say to their loved ones, "We are coming," because they see that nothing is happening, and they even passed the border, passed the fence. So we don't know. This is a developing story right now. And because they say, okay, we're going to fetch our loved one because nothing is happening.
At least 2 hostage families have refused to let their loved ones' names be used in the state ceremony, planned for the 7th of October by Transportation Minister Miri Regev, who was recently appointed to organise the event. They expressed concerns that the event would amount to propaganda, meant to whitewash the government's culpability. We will not agree to our loved ones being memorialised in an engineered, contrived memorial performance under the watch of cynical politicians who shirk responsibility. Jonathan Chamariz told Ynet News website. Chamariz, whose brother Alon Chamariz was one of the 3 hostages accidentally killed by Israeli forces as they escaped their captors, is among the leaders of the Kamu, or Rise Up, an organisation of border community residents that will put together an alternative ceremony. Aside from the government's inability to resolve the crisis, which Nathalie is talking about, southern residents and like-minded allies have been angry over the past 10 months over what they say is abandonment by the state. Many have expressed anger over the adamant refusal by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other government leaders to take responsibility or to allow even investigations into the various mishaps which culminated in thousands of Hamas-led terrorists running rampant through southern Israel before the army or other security forces made an effective response. Now, one of the results of the October the 7th is the mistrust now people have in security, which before Israelis would be very trusting in security. They had to be because of all the terrorist attacks, wars, etc. But the fact that on October the 7th there was thousands of Hamas terrorists running loose in the south of Israel.
Can I add a bit something when you say that? Like to look at the side with God's eyes also. Because what's happening, we know that the Messiah is coming. We know that the Messianic kingdom is going to come. And God is trying to prepare us in Israel first, obviously, because the Messiah comes here. But like he wants to prepare us also as humanity. And he has 3 things. It's like, or we follow his commandments, or we do tshuva, which is like we repent, we come back to him. And if we don't do these 2 things, there is suffering that's happening for us to be ready and worthy for him to come. It's like a Jewish way of thinking, but I think more and more we see it in front of our eyes. We see so much suffering. But the thing with very good is like we know that God is in control. And the thing is, people were always trusting their government. I mean, here, but also all around the world. And God said, no, you have to trust me. This is me first. And we see all around the world that the governments are not going. I mean, we know about the New World Order and all of that. And so we are more and more people are awake to think, okay, no, we can't trust in our government. Our government should be there to serve us, but they are not. They are trying to enslave us. So because of that, many people, and I know it's like people who are making tshuva, who are turning to God and say, okay, we need to go back to him. And in the midst of all the suffering, we see a big change of hearts and longing for peace, but like not the one that we are trying to make like illusion. It's like the deep shalom that God wants to prepare.
Now, one of the things I haven't talked about is about the evacuees. I mentioned that on previous programs about the fact that people have been moved, sometimes forcibly moved from their homes in the north and the south. And the north, the evacuees are still in the hotel situation, and only this week the government said it would continue to settle the evacuees in hotels, etc., across the country. Now, these people have been away from their homes, just abandoned. One particular story where a man who was evacuated said he left the keys under the doormat because he thought it would be a day, hours or days, not weeks and months. And we're coming up to a year that many people have been evacuated from their homes. And not just that, but I've reported also on the theft that thieves have been stealing from the evacuees' homes in the north of Israel. And so these people are suffering, and that, as Nathalie was saying, there's people suffering all over the country for many different reasons, but evacuees are one group of these who are suffering. Now, Nathalie, I know that you have things to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, when we see all these things, I wanted to encourage you, because we all need encouragement. And when you read the Psalm 23, which is very famous, you need to know the background. The background is like David was fleeing because King Saul, Shaul in Hebrew, he wanted to kill David. And so David is like a fugitive, and is in a terrible time. And I wanted to say, yeah, he was himself discouraged, okay? And so he flee in a barren place, and there he make this amazing, beautiful song. And he said that in this barren place, God infused moisture in the forest for him to be able to live for a while over there. And so the story is like, we shouldn't be discouraged. We have to encourage ourselves and each other again and again, because God can always rescue us, even at the last minute. And we have many testimonies about that, okay? So when you read this psalm, you need to understand, you know, when you read it, God brought me into green pasture, but this was a barren forest, and God is changing it for him. And then there is this passage that I was reading it a few months ago now, and it really struck me, because he said, Ki ata imadi, which means you are standing with me. In our translation, it says you are with me, but it's not really that, because when you look at the name imadi, it comes from, I would say, I'm standing. It will be ani or med, okay? It comes from the same root. And so when he say you are with me, it's not just like you are with me, like, you know, it is a concrete thing. God is standing next to us all the time. So when he say, when I'm going into the valley of the shadow of death, I am not going to fear lo ira ra. I'm not going to fear evil. Not just having fear. I'm not going to fear evil. Lo ira ra. Ki ata imadi, because you are standing with me. And when you put yourself, we have different situations. But if we put all ourselves where we are, and when it's difficult, you say, Ki ata imadi, God is just next to me. He's standing with me. He's always with me in any situation, because I know life is complicated and difficult right now. But we have to think, we are going into new time. We will come into this messianic time, and we will see peace. But right now we are, like, again, we speak all the time about a lady who is in labor, and more the baby is arriving, more the pain is there. But we know after that we forgot everything, and it's like, oh, a baby, you know. So it's going to be the same. But you need to know Ki ata imadi. And it's very interesting, because I have a friend, or we have a friend, and he just made a beautiful song. It's called Israel Portnoy, if you want to look, and his song is called Ki ata imadi. Or it might be just called Imadi. But there is many people who are doing songs to encourage each other now, and songs about the kingdom is going to come, because we know that it's difficult right now.
Yeah, and have done an interview with him,
yes,
which you can look at on our YouTube channel. Maybe you can search it because it should pop up, hopefully under the name of Israel Portnoy. We've done an interview with him, and there's some songs in the interview as well that he's done with his brother. So you can have a look at that on our YouTube channel. So do go to the YouTube channel and have a look at the videos there. Some of the videos we haven't been able to do on the YouTube channel, they're on the Rumble channel, so you can also look at the Rumble channel as well.
And the Rumble channel, by the way, I know you can't see it in France because it's not been accepted because of freedom restriction, but the Rumble doesn't take the numbers away. We know when our YouTube, because of all the things that's happening, we see the number going up and we see the number going down. So just for you to know that when you see things written, it's not always, we are in a world of illusion.
Yes.
Isn't it? We're in a world of illusion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things happening in the world with the news isn't being presented in the right way, and there are things being said which are not true. And you know, the mainstream media, I'm sorry to say, folks, has gone.
Yes.
So if you look at it, bear that in mind, that it is not representing what's truly happening, and it really, since COVID has disappeared as a reliable news source. So if you really want to know what's going on, you have to look elsewhere. We do a story on our website every day, and we try and...
You are?
Yeah, it's on the media page. You just click on the media page, and then there's a news story, so you can look at that. You know, there are some we bring you the news that things are difficult in Israel for a reason, that you know what's happening on the ground here. It's not something really presented in the mainstream media so much. The main news is about the war and the hostages and other things, but the situation on the ground isn't reported so much, and it's very important for you to know, because I know a lot of you who watch Israel First are very concerned about what's happening to the people during all these things. There are some positives in the middle of everything. There is a lot of construction going on. I'm not sure how much of the housing is going to help the average Israeli person, but there is construction going on in different places. That was hindered, as we've said, because after October the 7th, they stopped allowing the entry of Palestinian workers into Israel to do construction. But somehow it seems to be starting up a little bit, maybe, in different places. And that's certainly encouraging to see different things, as long as they're good projects, Nathalie.
Yes, and they brought some workers from India.
Yes.
A lot of workers from India are working.
And just quickly, before we finish, I just want to mention that, you know, there's been an unprecedented, you know, as this, I'm coming back to the October the 7th and the war, there's been an unprecedented number of wounded IDF soldiers since October the 7th. Root Rehabilitation Hospital has been featured in the Jerusalem Post, who's playing a very important role with the rehabilitation of the injured IDF soldiers. It's located in the centre of Tel Aviv and caters for about a third of all the outpatient rehabilitation people have been injured. Now, this is the Jerusalem Post figures. More than 60,000 soldiers and civilians have been wounded since October the 7th and in the subsequent war. It's an unheard of and enormous challenge for the Israeli healthcare system, and I think we've mentioned that before. There are long waiting lists for many hospitals in Israel for different procedures, not for everything, but for many things you have to wait, and particularly for those who need physical and psychological rehabilitation. and it's something we've reported on before, but it's something you need to understand, because it's having a huge impact on people, the war, because we're not only people are dying there, but there's also a lot of people who've been injured. Well, it's been very good to be with you. I hope that it's been very helpful, all the information that we share. Please let us know where you're watching. That's always very interesting for us. We love to hear your stories, where you live. Please write to us. The email address you can contact us is on the website, and is info@israelfirst.org. You can also, there's also a contact page to get in touch with us. Please also consider supporting us. We do need your financial support to enable us to continue this program, getting the news out to you, what's happening behind the scenes in Israel. Well, thank you so much again for being with us. And don't forget, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.